Hello and welcome to Tavern Chat. I am your host, Eric Tenkar, your bartender in the OSR, and today's episode, go figure, is a topic is about taverns. And why is it that for so many adventures, the default setting, the default kickoff is you all meet in a tavern, or you're all at a tavern, or you're all drinking at a tavern or at a tavern XYZ happens. And why is that? So, to put this in perspective, Rach and I went down to our local pub for dinner tonight and went at a time that we normally when we go on a weekday around lunchtime, around 1 o'clock. And we know the crowd, right? You know, the crowd is the older crowd, the retiree crowd. But tonight, it was a different crowd. We got there around 7ish, right? You encounter a different crowd, but you still have regulars. You still have people that you recognize. And here's the thing: when you walk into your local watering hole, right, you expect the bartender to have the dirt on what's going on in the community. What's going on? So and so broke the hip. Uh, Oh, well, you heard that there was a house fire on 55th Avenue. Oh, well, you did you hear that there was a robbery? Because they hear all the stories, right? They're the ones that have their ear to the wall, right? They're the ones listening in, whether they're actively listening or not. So when we take this to a fantasy RPG situation, your bartender is the one that you expect to know all the going ons. Are children going missing? Well, your bartender probably knows, right? Is somebody recruiting adventurers? Well, you know what? Your bartender probably knows. So it makes sense in a lot of ways for your tavern, your bar, your pub in a fantasy RPG to be that place where characters would go either to find adventure inspiration or to find adventures themselves. Also, in a lot of towns, especially in a fantasy RPG environment, where's the only place that you're going to find ready food, right? Adventurers they don't have an established home, right? They are travelers. Well, the tavern or the pub is probably where you have either a common room at night for them to sleep in, or maybe a handful of private rooms upstairs or in the back, right? And it has a kitchen. It means there's food that's being prepped. Now, really, when it comes to when you think about it, what are party members looking for when they are adventuring? They're looking for a place to sleep, a place to drink, and a place to eat. That often means your bar, your tavern, your dare I say it, alcohol establishment. Now, it's also the place where, listen, my local pub has local papers, right? Those local papers that are free and supported by advertising, and they tell you what's going on in the neighborhood and who's looking for contractors, who has apartments for rent. So this is the place where you find this stuff. Now, in a fantasy RPG or fantasy setting, why not? Right? This could be a place where they leave flyers along that one wall, or there's a bulletin board. Adventurers being sought after. Uh, Missing spouse, missing children. So all these things come into play. So don't think that just because, oh God, it's a trope, it always has to take place and it always has to kick off in a tavern. When you think about it, right? When you really sit down and put your mind to it, in the average medieval town, village, uh, fantasy cognate or simulacrum of what we would expect in a medieval setting of our own, put that fantasy trapping on it, and it's like, where else would all these things happen? It happens in a tavern, right? Who comes in When I'm at my local pub, almost invariably there's somebody walking in to sell uh, bootleg clothing or bootleg DVDs, right? Why wouldn't that be the same at a fantasy tavern? Why wouldn't you have people coming in and go, oh, every day, you come in at 1 and 5, you catch the lunch crowd, you catch the dinner crowd. Hey, you've got these potions, right? They're healing potions, and maybe they work. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't work. But these are things that you can add in. Stuff that happened at your local pub. Darts, right? Now, my local pub doesn't have space for darts, but many of the ones I used to go to when I was younger did. Why can't you have bar games that are going on in the midst of all this stuff? The background noise that you forget about is what makes these taverns in the fantasy setting come alive. And to overlook it, I think, is a mistake. I mean, it's where the bards play, right? Now, in my local establishment, they do karaoke on Fridays and Saturdays. So thank you. And occasionally they have live music, but there's a jukebox, right? That's your bard. Your bard on demand, and you'll get the right songs playing, get the Rolling Stones going with the right crowd. You'll get people singing along, right? Why can't you have people singing along with whatever tune's being sung at the fantasy tavern? And maybe that's how somebody goes, oh, you know that song? It's like, oh, it's about, uh, you know, the young men that went missing 12 years ago at the ruins. Well, really, what's going on at the ruins? And there's a lot of ways to set it up that we don't even think about because it's such a trope that we just throw out there. It's like, oh, you all meet at a tavern. Tavern is more than just that meeting place. There is a life to it. It's got its own heartbeat, its own blood, its own conversation. And if a town has two different pubs, you might also expect to have two different environments. Why not? Right? So maybe your players find one to be more appealing than the other. Just little things to think about. I'd hate to think that we would forget about that and not use such to our advantage. Folks, as always, we are in the midst of the world of COVID. I ask you, I beg of you, use your common sense. I'm not giving medical advice. I'm not telling you get vaccinated or don't get vaccinated, wear a mask, don't wear a mask. I'm not saying that shit. I'm just saying use your common sense to keep yourself healthy. Because if you're not healthy, you can't help others. Be safe, be well. God bless. Roll those dice. And God willing, I will be back again tomorrow with a bad mic. We have a special guest. It's going to be talking about, I believe, a Kickstarter the Frog God has out. I don't know, something that might have funded. Uh, Necromancer, Necropolis, something like that. We might have the author that has brought it to Swords of Wizardry in 5e from the original E. Gary Gygax notes. So I'm just saying, we might. Or we might have nobody. Who the fuck knows? Uh, Folks, please tune in tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern. Knock on wood. God willing, I will be there. All right, folks. Thank you so much. Later.